Hi everyone, welcome back to our live Q&A with the Mama Genius Hub podcast. I got Jaclyn here with me, and this is the 12th interview. I have gone through 12 interviews in the last 3 days. I'm so excited she's my last because she's so full of inspiration on both the mom aspect and the kid aspect of genius. If you guys are out there and you have questions, please ask away. But before I bring her on, I am going to bring down her bio and I'm going to read it because it's pretty impressive. Jaclyn Whitt is an award-winning screenwriter with 3 feature films, and I think there might be more coming along the way, and a season of 1 sitcom currently in pre-production. She and her husband, Geoff, are directors of the Family-Friendly Screenwriting Academy, an online resource that offers workshops, festivals, and mentorships, programs for screenwriters to create family-friendly and faith-based content. So it has been a long day. Jaclyn is a former homeschool mom and is a proud mother of 2 adult children. So we get such a wealth of knowledge from Jaclyn. We get ideas about homeschooling, we get empowering moms' passions, and then igniting that all together with the kids' genius. Welcome, Jaclyn. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Good to talk to you again.
So just let's dive right in because you have such a wealth of knowledge. And I kind of want to start with the mom empowerment. Sometimes we start with the kids, sometimes, but I just want to jump into the moms today because I love in our podcast interview, which airs tomorrow. So we will get the information out on that. But tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central, her episode will go live. And looking at when you were a mom in the midst of all of this, I know part of it, what we talked about was that you kind of did your passion on the sidelines and didn't even really engage it till your kids were a little bit older. And I think some moms might feel like if they don't do it as soon as it's in their heart, that it's never going to happen. And I love your testimony to that not being true.
Yeah. Well, okay. It's the same with when you're trying to fall asleep and then something comes to your mind, you're like, oh, that's an idea that I need to hold on to. And it's like, if you don't get up and write it down, then it's going to be like stuck in your mind. You're not going to be able to sleep. And so if you kind of get in the habit with that, with creative passions too, where it's like, okay, I have this idea. If you take 5-10 minutes, whatever, to at least write the idea down, then you're not going to lose it. But maybe now's just not the time to work on it. And that was a lot of what I did for years, where I had this amazing idea, or at least the start of one. And so I would write it down and I kept track of all of these ideas. And when I actually had time to sit down and write a script, then I would do that. But it's true that there were seasons in my parenting life where I had the time and I could sit down and I could write. When my kids were toddlers, you'd think, oh, there's no time. Actually, I wrote when they were napping for 2 years. Every day that they were napping when their dad was at work, I was writing. So that I actually finished my first movie during that time. Yeah. And so then over the years that followed, when things got a little bit more involved and there was no more nap time,
then those naps went away. Darn it!
Right? I didn't have as much time to work on it, but I did keep notes. And it's been every now and then I'll even find something where I'm like, oh, I forgot I had that, and so I would have completely lost that idea if I had not made a note that I could find later.
So you keep saying notes, and this has just made my mind curious in terms of, I know people collect notes in different ways, and you're saying you collect them over the years. What was your style for keeping them in a safe place so they didn't just get lost in the shuffle and then forgot about forever?
Yeah, I actually put them on my computer. I have a file folder on my computer that's like Jackie's ideas. That's all it is. There's nothing finished in there. It's just ideas. And so I can go back to my, folder of ideas and pull it out and be like, yeah, I'm going to work on this one now.
So is it like one document, or is it just documents saved under different names, or I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of random documents that I save it into that folder. And so, sometimes even if I was because I'm also a songwriter, so sometimes I've written songs on scrap paper or napkins or whatever. Right. Take a picture of it, put the picture in the folder.
That's a good idea, just to take a picture of it. Yeah, I would think you'd want to go type it up, but not even wasting your time. Just take a picture and get into that folder.
Yeah, I'm all about the easiest route whenever possible, right?
Well,
Like,
that's why I wanted to pick your brain, because I was like, whenever my mind goes like, okay, ask her, because it's like we have all these ways, but the fact that you were able to like do this as a busy mom, and then now that your kids are out of the house, be able to go back and actually find these notes, I'm like, that's impressive. So I'm like, how did you do it?
yeah, well, yeah, definitely. That's why I had to do it digitally because I lose track of physical things easily. It's, like I'm not the type of person to lose my keys, but I am the type of person that just paper, it ends up somewhere and I don't know where.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I'm like, oh, I want it on paper, and I feel better when I write it down. But then you're right. But I guess with smartphones and stuff, and taking the pictures, and even doing an Evernote or something, but just
Mhm.
these capacities that we have these options just to store it, but just pick one storage spot that you can always return to later. But that's such a great idea, because like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have no ideas later on down the line. You're like, wait a minute, there's a whole folder just sparkling to, and then I bet I have to, I'm guessing, but I'm betting as you're going through it, you're sparking new ideas, correct?
Oh yeah, and actually because I've grown in my own craft, it's like, well, now that I'm going to attack it with like, or tackle it, better word, with this new skill that I have, I'm going to actually do a better job with it now than I would have if I had tried to complete it, 15 years ago when I first had the idea. But now I can actually do more with it. Now I can actually even, well, sometimes I can even decide, is this actually worth pursuing? Because I have so many ideas, and honestly, not all of them are worth pursuing. But I love having them. I love thinking about them.
So for you, coming from a screenwriter's perspective and stuff, what would be an idea worth pursuing for you? Like when you're looking through your notes, what's the
Yeah,
idea?
okay. So there's always going to be two sides, right? Like on the one side is, does it bring me joy? Do I love this? Is this something that I would find fulfilling regardless if I ever made money off of it? Right? If the answer is yes, I'm going to find time at some point to work on it because it matters to me specifically. But if it's not something where, it's so deep in my heart, but it's something that I think, you know what, this is something of value and I think I could market it and I could do well with it and I could really enjoy the process, bringing it to fruition, then yes, that's another one I'll pursue. So some of it is just knowing the market or at least market trends. And so that's the business side of things. So as a screenwriter, like for a long time, it was a hobby. So it was all about joy. It was all about, it fulfilled me, whether anybody else even knew it existed or not. It was for me. Now that I do it as like a business, then I have to take into account like, okay, is this going to actually bring me income? Because I can only do so many passion projects that I don't get paid for. There's only so much time in the day.
Monetization, come on.
Right? Exactly.
But I love that in terms, and sometimes for women, I just can bring this up because it does seem scary, like the idea of monetizing. And I know we wish we could always do our passion projects and do things for free. But I also want to bring this conversation, since it kind of came up to light, is that as women have the purchasing power, like really believing and buying into these products and projects that we're doing. So I mean, for instance, like tell us, well, since it just came up, tell us a little bit about your course that you offer. Because I think the more that we get comfortable with sharing this and realizing the power of it, the more that we have the purchasing power and the more we're going to raise each other up. And I know yours is a great class. This is even for kids to learn to be screenwriters.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I have a few programs. So one of them, I'll start with the one that would be for adults. Although the youngest I've had in my class, I think he was 11, although he was an actor, so he had experience already with the film industry. But most people are 15 and older that come to my Screenwriting Foundations class. It's a 7-week course that teaches you everything that you need to get started on your project. It's not like you're going to come and write your script in 7 weeks, because that would be really hard to promise. It takes me longer than 7 weeks to write a script. But what it does is it teaches you the foundations of what you need to get yourself organized, so then you can get off on the right foot and write your screenplay. Because one of the things that I found is that people flounder without that kind of technique. So what I do is I teach that technique of getting organized, getting started, and then from there, they have what they need, that, you know, they can then go write their story the way that they want it to be written.
And what is like page numbers and stuff for like a screenplay? Like, 'cause I mean, movies are generally a certain number. Like, how many pages is that?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that you learn is how to format a script properly. And so a properly formatted screenplay, one page is going to equal about 1 minute of screen time. So depending on how long you want your project to be, that's how long your page count will be. So if you want it to be an hour and a half, that's 90 minutes. So that's 90 pages. If you want it to be 2 hours, you're up to 120. You know, let's say you want to write a sitcom, which I've written several. Well, then you need to actually keep it like between 20 to 25 pages. Because, yeah, exactly. You got to factor that in. So usually it's about 22, 23 pages. But they're super fun. So.
Well, I love this conversation because for me, and I don't know if other moms are out there like feeling like this, but like just the idea of screenwritings and movies, like that seems so far out there, like something like that wouldn't be tangible. And to like see another mom and like see your words in there, it's just inspiring. And seeing that's the whole point of this podcast. So it's just to like see the possibilities. Like if that is something that is inside of you, that you're someone doing it and it is feasible.
Totally. And because I was working on it, just kind of like, I called it a closet hobby. You know, it was like my 30-year closet hobby. It was something I did just because I loved it. A lot of people had no idea that I was writing. They knew I was creative, but they didn't know I was writing movies. But then once I decided, okay, I'm serious, I got a mentor who taught me how to write according to what the industry would be looking for. And then when I was ready to start submitting to festivals, the first one I submitted to, I didn't win a thing. I didn't even make it into any kind of like, you know, quarter finalist, nothing. So I realized.
So let me ask you this. Did you learn anything?
I learned that I wasn't ready. And my mentor told me, he said, the script isn't ready. I said, well, I just want to do it anyway. But for me, it was kind of more like I wanted to push myself into the next level, even if I wasn't ready, because I kind of feel like a lot of the time in life, we wait until we're ready. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to do that. I thought, well, okay, if I lose, I'm okay with that because I'm not going to give up. But I want to push myself to get to that level that's now where I'm at. So I did.
You know, it's funny though, is like you said, and the feeling is like you're never ready, right? But part of the readiness is the experience. So you like have to start like when you're like half ready, because you're not going to get better unless you like fall on your face a little bit. I mean,
yeah, well, exactly. And so then I took that particular script that went nowhere. I took it and I worked on it for the next 6 months, put it in another festival, and I won first place. And then that script has gone on to win like 13, 14 awards, something like that. So it's, you know, that's kind of the thing where I knew like, even if I'm not like ready to win stuff, I want to get to that level. So I just basically pushed myself to participate on that level and then work my way up to earning that position that I eventually wanted.
Well, I mean, that's just it, is you start acting becoming that person by actually putting yourself out there. And I think that's what it's all about. And just want to like celebrate you right here now, because we need to give that celebration to each other before we switch gears, because now we're going to go down the kid route. We got the genius both sides from you, which is so exciting because you have so much to offer from finding genius in the kids as well. And tell us a little bit about that side, and if you want to do it from your script writing or from your personal experience with your son, or however you want to take that question.
Okay, well, I do also offer mentorship programs for teenagers. I was lining it up with like the school year, but then I didn't get enough students for that particular class because it's the first time I'm running it. But I do have some private students that I work with like privately, and they're super passionate about writing. Like, my goodness, it is so much fun to work with kids that are like all about screenwriting. So we can just sit there and geek out. It's awesome. And so like, yeah, like that's actually one of the things, whether it's like screenwriting with me or whatever it is that the kids are interested in, like if you can find someone, if you're not that person that wants to geek out with them, if you can find someone that can be that mentor to totally geek out with them, where it's like they can see like, okay, this is normal to love this so much. And, you know, sometimes when they're teenagers, especially if they're really passionate about something, and my son was the same way, they're used to being the smartest person in the room on that subject, right? And so my oldest son, like I told you before, he was all about computers and absolutely just like genius at it. And so he was used to being the smartest person in the room when it came to computers. So I put him in this computer camp in the summer, and the teacher there was like, "No, he needs to be in my advanced class." And so that kind of got the ball rolling, where I realized, okay, he's even better than I thought. And so I hired that guy, that teacher, to come and mentor my son. So the first time he came over, they're working in the living room. I'm in the kitchen doing my thing, giving them space. But I was listening. My son was like, every time the teacher was trying to teach him, my son was saying, "Oh, I do that this way instead." And so he kept saying how he does it. And so then after a bit, I stepped in. I said, "Okay, do you want to learn something, or do you just want to tell somebody else what you know?" And he hadn't really thought about that. He didn't realize what he was doing. He just was used to doing it a certain way. So he was just saying, "Oh, I do it this way." But then once I put that out there, then it kind of restructured his perspective so that he was now receiving the instruction rather than, you know, defending how he was doing things. And then he was totally able to you know, shine and learn new stuff. And so that's another thing I think for parents to pay attention to or pick up on, is especially for the ones that are like gifted, because they are used to doing it themselves, especially if they were self-taught for a while. So to, you know, remind them, like, you're here to learn, right? Be on the receiving end of information right now. Nobody's judging you. You don't need to get defensive. Just soak up as much as you can, you know, and if they do get a little defensive, then just remind them, like, do you think that this teacher knows more than you? Okay, so then listen, right? Like, so these are the conversations that really help to foster that love of learning in kids.
I really need to have that conversation with my son about a social studies teacher. There's been some sparks going on lately. And I think that's so true. It's like they just want to say that they know everything, and it's like opening the doors up to something else. And so looking at all that and just reminding them. But I love how you were saying about being in the genius and finding that person to help them foster that. Because even if you can't do it, you can find someone who can and is better at that. And sometimes we think it's something that we need to learn or do ourselves. But I love how you said find a mentor for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can totally, like, you can geek out on the joy of it, right? Like, I never understood a word of what my son was talking about, what he was learning, but I was so excited for him. And so we could bond over that. But like, if he had to wait for me to catch up to learn the stuff he knew so that I could learn more so I could mentor him, oh man, we'd be here forever.
You'd still be at it.
Yes. And I would not be happy about it. Like, honestly, it's not my thing.
So, I mean, that's just such a great point. And so when we find stuff that our kids are interested in, find someone doing it. And honestly, the one thing that I've noticed also is there's a lot of senior citizens who would love to mentor some younger kids and to like looking for some of those things. And if that's something that interests you, is working with other people's, I'm just throwing that idea out there to the audience, just in, you know, because you never know that. I mean, when we were working, we were doing like holiday parties at one of the senior centers, and then it was like they love to read, and so it was like them just reading with the kids and stuff. And something like, then like those moms are tired of, like, don't feel like doing the reading every day, like setting up something like that. Those are just throwing ideas out there. I don't know.
Yeah, especially, and that's actually a really great way to help when there's deficiency isn't necessarily the right word, but pretty much, you know, like when there's a struggle in a particular thing, especially like reading, when you can find a listener who is fully engaged and loving the process, you know, then kids are more likely to practice reading. So seniors or younger kids or animals, you know, like finding some way to set the kid up to practice reading. And you know what's crazy? Like, I actually don't tell anyone, but I don't like reading. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm a writer, but when I was growing up, I actually struggled with reading. It was very difficult. And even now, it takes me longer to read things than it would take most people, you know, most adults, right? And I don't know, that's just how my brain works. But I realized that reading is such an important part of life. And I was able to foster a love for reading in my kids that I didn't even have in myself, because I did take the time to make reading fun. Like I would find fun books and I would read out loud to them, and I would make all the voices. And maybe that's why it takes me so long to read, because that's how I read. In my head, I hear
like an actress that you are. You're a screenwriter plus actress.
that's, yeah, well, I actually am. I have done voice acting and I've narrated audiobooks. So that's what I'm saying. You know, you got to pay me to read, but then I'll do a great job and I'll make it a recording for you.
I love that. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. But yeah, like even if it's something that, you know, you recognize there's value in it, but it's not something that you were able to bring yourself to fully embrace, you can still foster that in your kids.
So we're running out of time, but I started asking moms, I know because we didn't get a chance to do this for your podcast, but there's 2 of the 5 questions I want to ask you because we kind of covered some of them. But can you share a favorite book or resource that has had a significant impact on your journey as a mom?
Well, I'm glad I just said I don't really read, because
But it could be a resource. It doesn't, I mean, anything that like impacted you.
You know, to be honest, this might seem a little bit backwards, but there was a book that I listened to the audiobook. It's a Dr. Phil book. It was about, like, I forget what the title is, but it was about actually growing as myself. Like, and so the more that I became mature in who I am, the better mom that I was. And I was a single parent at that time. I spent about over 6 years as a single parent. And so I realized that in order for my kids to have the mom that I wanted them to have, I had to take care of her, which meant I needed to work on me. And so I made that a huge priority, not because it, like, I mean, yes, it was for my benefit, but it was just as much for their benefit. And so, believe it or not, it was working on myself that I think impacted them the most.
Oh, I believe it, because that's where I was at. And I think that's why we're even doing this. It's part of the Genius acronym, is that self-care, unleashing it. Because if we don't unleash it, then we're I mean, it's the same thing as when you're hungry. If you don't feed yourself, you're going to be snappy. If you don't take care of your brain, you're going to be snappy. And so things are going to come at you no matter what you do. But if you don't do anything to put a barrier between you and that, and self-care, food puts a barrier between that, so you can respond. So here's my final question, because you're running down, and I do have to go pick up my daughter shortly, because you know the mom duties come in.
That's right.
Now, this is a conversation I'm trying to open up, because I don't per se still have the answer, but I'm getting some fascinating answers along the way. But so I'm opening up the conversation to say, I don't know about you, but I always use the words when someone asks you, how are you doing? I always respond, I'm busy.
Oh,
blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure there's a lot of moms out there. And I even in my marketing for the podcast, it's like busy moms, because that's how we identify ourselves. But I want to release that and come up with some suggestions of saying, how are you? What are other ways we can respond instead of saying I'm busy?
I have such a great answer for that, because I used to say that all the time. And I was like, I hate hearing myself say that. Yes. And so I thought about, like, so what am I doing? And I thought, it's not busy work, it's important work. My life is very full. And so now when people ask, like, you know, how are you? How have things been? I can say, I have a full life. You know, and so saying I have a full life, yes, it means that I have a lot going on. Obviously, you know, I am busy, but it's not just busy work. It's very fulfilling. So I have a full life.
I love that so much. And that's what I'm trying to do, is just throw that idea out there, and like, let's release the busyness from us, because it's not about productivity. It's about being, and figure out how do we want to word it. And so it's like there's no one way or one right way to do it, but just throwing out there for people to find a way for them to express it differently. So thank you so much Jaclyn, for coming on. Give us a quick website, since you already told us about your programs. Give us a quick way for people to get to know it, get to find you. Blech.
Okay. Actually, if you want to check out the work that I've done, my personal website, which is kind of like a portfolio, is princessofyah.com. Princess of Yah, like YAH. So, because it's a name for God. So princessofyah.com.
I love that. Check out Jaclyn. If you have any kids interested in screenwriting or adults, go track her down because you know what? That's what this is all about is finding the passions inside of you. And I'm trying to give you practical ways to make it actually happen. So if screenwriting is your thing, Jaclyn's your person to go figure that out with because it's not me. But she will be able to break it down for you and make it a reality if that's something that is your passion. So thank you so much for coming on today, Jaclyn. And this is the last interview of the launch. Woohoo! I gotta celebrate.
Congratulations.
Oh, wait, you had one more thing you were gonna say about the podcast, the way I was addressing Genius.
Oh, yes. I wanted to point out that what I really appreciate about what you're doing is that you're embracing both motherhood and that inner creativity and pursuit of self, like all at the same time, because I haven't seen that so much. Like I've seen where it's the focus on, kids and helping to develop the kids, and then there's like focus on self, but not necessarily together. And so I love that you're balancing this out because it really is a balancing act. Some seasons you're focused on the kids, some seasons you have time you can like focus on building yourself, and I like that you balance the both of them.
Though I have to stop you for 1 second because I'm trying to get the word balance out of our vocabulary.
Okay.
Only because balance feels like a weight on both sides. And so I love that though, because we're going through the rhythm of the seasons. And that
Yes.
was so beautiful because it's like that flow state between what we're doing. And honestly, when we're our role models for our kids, they're inspired to find their genius too. And that's why it has to link together because we're in this together. And that was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing so much, Jaclyn. And thank you, everyone. And we'll be seeing you in the Women's Circle tomorrow night. If you haven't signed up yet, you can get the link by going to register at connectingmamas.com. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.